Yeah.
Here's the question. So you go back to the Democrats.
Does
You know, then you think they would have enough votes to pass it.
yeah, but what did that override? I don't entirely know how that works. It has to be something. All right.
Wow, dungarees.
You know, I shoveled and kept going. All right, let's get everyone assembled. It is a great pleasure and honor to be here at EMS Station 32 with members of EMS and with our friends from the FDNY. And this is a nostalgic moment for me. I was just talking to Commissioner Cassano about the fact that I was here the day this station was opened because it is in my old city council district. And I remember how much enthusiasm there was in the community to have this beautiful facility opened up. And I'm happy to be here with some of the bravest, hardest working people in this city, members of the EMS and the FDNY. And they had a long night, but they did a hell of a job protecting people, even though conditions were tough. And I just want to say a thank you to all of the members of EMS and FDNY for their extraordinary service every day, but particularly with conditions such as we faced yesterday. Joining me are Commissioner Doherty, Commissioner Bruno, Commissioner Cassano, from the FDNY Chief of Department Ed Kilduff, Chief of EMS Abdo Namod, Councilman Steve Levin, who I always refer to as my cellmate from the protest against the hospital closures a few months back, and then representing some of the hard-working people who work here, Izzy Miranda, the president of Local 2507, Uniform EMTs, paramedics, and fire inspectors, and Lieutenant Vinny Variali, president of Local 3621, Uniform EMS officers. I want to thank them all for joining us. Everyone here, they go above and beyond on a regular basis. Yesterday was no exception. Very tough conditions. Everyone kept working. They kept working hard. They did a great job. And I want to express the respect and gratitude of the people of New York City for the members of the FDNY and members of EMS for what they do for us. This storm was challenging in its size and intensity, but the people who work for the City of New York rose to the occasion once again. And even though we faced high winds, we faced frigid temperatures, and a storm that actually intensified at the least opportune moment, intensified just before rush hour last night. The men and women who work for this city kept responding, intensified their efforts. I went to a sanitation garage last night in the west side of Manhattan. Help me, Commissioner, the number again? 4 and 7, garage 4 and 7 Manhattan. And was talking to the workers there just as they were starting the 8 p.m. shift. And there was a focus and intensity to them as they knew it was their job, now that the cars were off the road, to go out and make things right in New York City. And one of your workers, Commissioner, looked at me and he had a kind of eye of the tiger look. And he said, "This is when we shine." And he was ready for the mission ahead. So I want to commend you and your team for the attitude they brought to the challenge yesterday. Total accumulation of snow in Central Park was 11 inches. So again, slightly larger than the last storm. Higher totals were recorded in parts of Staten Island and the Bronx. I want to say that despite the timing of the snow and the intensification of the snow right around rush hour, so many people worked hard to get people home safe. Obviously, all the people who work at sanitation. I also want to commend our colleagues from the MTA for the great job they did. It was a long commute for some, but it was a safer one because everyone responded appropriately. Our sanitation workers have been out in force for the last 24 hours, working nonstop, doing extraordinary work. They began plowing in any part of the city yesterday where accumulation had reached roughly 2 inches. That was the signal to begin plowing operations, continued and intensified after the evening rush hour. I was driving around parts of Manhattan and Brooklyn last night and saw that once the traffic was off the road again, sanitation was able to go out in real force and make a huge impact. And they made a lot of progress overnight. As of 6 a.m. this morning, 100% of primary streets have been plowed, 99% of secondary streets, and 90% of tertiary streets. As of 9 a.m. this morning, there are more than 1,800 pieces of snow removal equipment deployed across the city. That includes plows, salt spreaders, and front-end loaders. And personnel were also assigned to clear and shovel crosswalks and bus stops. Sanitation crews will continue working on 12-hour shifts until snow removal is complete. And I want to remind everyone that this extraordinary group of men and women have 6,300 miles of roads that they have to clear in the 5 boroughs. 6,300 miles. You could go from here to Los Angeles and back, and you still wouldn't cover 6,300 miles. It's absolutely extraordinary what they do in so little time. All told, 2,300 sanitation workers engaged in snow removal, along with a combined group of almost 200 additional workers from the Department of Transportation, Parks, and Environmental Protection. And our emergency service workers have done an extraordinary job in the midst of this, and there's a real teamwork that happens here. Because sanitation works incessantly to clear the roads, it allows FDNY and EMS to do their work more effectively. It's been a busy 24 hours in terms of our emergency services. Call volume to 911 has been up 20%. And in response, 160 additional ambulances were deployed. Now, on another topic, as everyone knows, late last night we made the decision to keep schools open. I participated in that conference call. We got the update from the National Weather Service around 10 p.m. that made clear that just as the snow had intensified earlier in the day, it was actually slowing very noticeably around 10 p.m. And it was clear at that point that we would have a much better situation by morning. So we made the decision to go ahead with school because we knew that we could do a good job overnight of clearing the streets. Again, I think what sanitation did allowed, and by all reports we received today, allowed school buses to function well and mass transit to function well. Not perfectly, but well enough so that we could get people to school on time or close to on time. I will say something I think everyone knows. There were many students hoping for a snow day. One of those students resides in my home. I had to make the call to disappoint him last night and tell him that the right thing to do was to keep school open. And I think we all know that we only close schools when it's absolutely necessary, and we judged last night that we could go forward with school effectively today. And that is happening now, and for that reason, I can also tell you that after-school activities and PSAL athletic programs will operate as scheduled today. So after-school and athletic programs will be continuing as scheduled today. I want to emphasize that it remains very, very cold. People need to take the precautions we've talked about over the last 24 hours, not spend too much time outside, obviously continue to not travel if not necessary. We're looking at high temperatures in the upper teens today, but again, we will still face the wind chill problem at certain times of the day, bringing a temperature down closer to 0 when you factor in the wind chill. Tonight, even more, we expect temperatures with wind chill to get down to -5 to -10. So we want people to exercise precaution. And our Homeless Services Department, again, out in full force, looking for any homeless individuals who need help, making sure they can be brought in immediately. Same things I've said before, I'll say them very quickly. Anyone who doesn't have heat, call your building owners or management. If that's not working, call 311. Senior centers closed today. If anyone has a neighbor who is a senior citizen or disabled, might need help, please keep checking in on your neighbors. Although the snow has passed, the frigid temperatures continue. We want people to look out for their neighbors. On the sanitation front, there will be no trash or recycling pickups until snow clearing efforts are complete. We'll keep you updated on that. Alternate side parking regulations suspended today and will be suspended tomorrow for snow removal. So alternate side suspended today and tomorrow. But guess what? Parking meters remain in effect. We want to continue to emphasize that the work of snow removal requires all of us to help sanitation by staying out of the way. So again, if you don't need to use your car, don't use your car. Don't go out unless you absolutely need to. If you have the option of mass transit, use mass transit. Every car off the street, every additional car we keep off the street allows sanitation to do their work better and quicker, so our streets will be cleared more effectively. And we want to emphasize that as that snow clearing operation continues, not only are our ambulance crews and other emergency services on duty, what we have continued to outfit their vehicles with chains and cables for traction so that they can move around as effectively as possible. In all things, mass transit is the best choice, and subway service should be running at close to normal levels throughout the day. Express service was restored during the morning rush hour, and they're putting it back fully as trains are being brought out of storage and back into service. Buses running at this moment about 80 to 90% of normal levels, and we hope for that to improve as we go through the day. Again, anyone who wants to clarify MTA conditions and schedules, MTA.info is the best choice. Staten Island Ferry operating on a regular schedule. East River Ferry and Rockaway Ferry are running as well. Again, for other needs, people should call 311 unless it is an emergency. So 311 for all normal needs, normal information requests, 911 only in the case of a life-threatening emergency. Couple of sentences in Spanish, and then we will take your questions. Estamos sumamente orgullosos de nuestros socorristas y empleados de sanidad pública. Pedimos a todos los neoyorquinos que se cuiden del frío y no salgan afuera si es posible. Si salen, por favor, usen el transporte público. With that, we welcome your questions. Dave.
Let me ask you, I'm sure you've heard the complaints from parts of Manhattan, the Upper East Side, for example, that they were treated differently than other parts of the city. Are they just mistaken?
They're just mistaken. No one was treated differently. We believe in a five-borough approach. That's in everything we do, and I'll have Commissioner Doherty speak to this as well. I think people need to be mindful when they hurl those charges. That it's not real respectful of the men and women who work so hard for us at sanitation. They were out there in force in every neighborhood. What happened was the snow hit right before rush hour in some parts of the city where there's obviously a high concentration of vehicles. It created a real jam-up, and it had to be worked through. But every neighborhood is being serviced very devotedly by the men and women of sanitation. Let Commissioner Doherty speak to that.
I think the mayor responded to it. I want to get beyond that. I've answered it to many, many people in the press this morning on the radio and TV. It is what it is. They can believe what they want. I know what we did. I know what some of our problems were. But we built a system. You think about it. We built a system where we allow the public to see exactly what we're doing right now. Sometimes the system doesn't work well, such as the one piece of equipment that was not sending out a signal. And we also have to look now beyond that and say, okay, how can we in the department and in the city spot a problem where it is? Things weren't moving. Streets were not getting done the way people should be for various reasons. How do we spot that? How do we work as a team with the PD and with DOT to address something if that's what the reason may be? You don't know the reason until you find it and you can spot it early. What happened there was we have a big city, and we're trying to look at all the operations going on in that city as far as doing the streets. We had one little pocket there, and probably if I looked, I'd probably find a couple more pockets there that there was probably a good reason why I didn't see the colors in there, and there's different reasons. So we have to learn how can we do that better. But I think what we did yesterday, we did the right thing. It was insurmountable problems, and I don't think it goes back to keep arguing what went wrong and what went right.
Marcia?
Well, the thing thing that I'm confused about is this. I went to the Upper East Side today, and I can tell you that there's plenty of snow on all the main thoroughfares from Fifth Avenue to the East Side, all the avenues, which are main thoroughfares. But when you come to Brooklyn, Atlantic Avenue, which is a main thoroughfare of Brooklyn, is at blacktop. And the question is, why were the plows able to plow Atlantic Avenue down to the ground, but if you go all along the Upper East Side, and I assure you I have pictures of it all, it's filled with snow. People can't walk, they can't push their baby carriages, buses can't get around the corners, people are slipping and sliding. I'd like to know the answer to that.
All right, look, again, we had, I think, an extraordinary effort in the last 24 hours, and if you go to a lot of parts of the city, and I've been talking to people all over the city that are reporting ever-improving situation. No one is at fault when it comes to the question of the snow intensifying right before the rush hour. That is an unfortunate reality we all have to face, and I think the folks who work for the city responded to that very, very well. If there's any place that's not good enough, we're going to keep working every hour from this point on to improve it. So I am certain that Commissioner Doherty is hearing what I'm hearing, and we're going to redouble our efforts. But the deployments of personnel and equipment have been even throughout the city, and what I'm hearing from the vast majority of the city is good reports.
Can you talk a little bit about schools switching gears? Do you have a number on how many students attended today and teachers, many of them living in Long Island, how many made it in or had to call out?
I don't have the attendance figures yet. It's going to take a little more time to get those. What we know is we made the decision in time to get out to the 11 o'clock news, and it was well broadcast. Obviously, people knew that, and we made that very clear in the briefings yesterday, that there had not been a pre-decision to close school, so folks were on alert who work in the school system to be ready to come in. From what I could see, conditions were good, and that I'm assuming the vast majority of kids and the vast majority of employees made it, but we'll have facts and figures later on.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned just when you were speaking earlier that you were driving around last night in Manhattan and Brooklyn. How late were you out? Where did you go, and what did you learn?
I was around the West Side and Midtown, and then down into Lower Manhattan, probably in the area of 8:30 to 9:30, and then I was at City Hall for a while for the 10 o'clock conference call, and then I drove home. So I went through a little bit of Lower Manhattan and some of Brooklyn. Again, what I saw was a lot of equipment out. And having a very big impact because the streets were finally clear. When I went, I even noticed the difference when I left OEM after we had the press conference there, and you could still see traffic finally thinning out at the end of rush hour. By the time I came out of the sanitation garage, which was pushing around 8:30 on the west side, you could see traffic was really, really greatly reduced. And that's when sanitation could really break through and make the impact that they've made overnight. Yes.
Mayor, what do you think of just the criticism?
I saw a guy like you just this morning, looked exactly like you, outside my house.
A little chillier.
Yeah.
What do you make of snow criticism? It kind of comes part of the job, and I was wondering if something that you reflected on as you were running, and your thoughts about handling your second snowstorm in only 3 weeks in the job.
Didn't expect 2 snowstorms in the first month, but it does come with the job. And there's a rich history of people in leadership positions dealing with weather crises. From my point of view, it's what you sign up for. And, my attitude is you have to be on top of the action, you have to lead from the front, you have to know what's going on. When we went through last time, I made clear to my team that I wanted to be on the conference calls to decide the school situation. I wanted to take personal responsibility for that decision. I wanted to be out seeing what was happening. I wanted to make sure we were talking to elected officials all over the city. And I want to say to Councilmember Levin and all his colleagues, we've been in constant touch with council members, community boards, other elected officials to get a sense of what they're seeing in their neighborhoods. And that's very important to us in terms of recognizing if there are any gaps that we have to address. But by definition, if you start a morning with no snow on the ground and by the end of the day there's a foot of snow on the ground, there will be challenges, and all of us signed up for those challenges. By the way, these very brave men and women who do the work signed up for challenges. The commissioners signed up for challenges. If people didn't want to handle these problems and didn't want to take some criticism in the process, none of us would do this work.
Yeah, I'm talking to some really spicy Brooklyn moms and dads this morning.
Did you say spicy?
Spicy, I said spicy. They say, Mayor 101, you got to hit storms more aggressively, and you got to call school out. You got to say it's a snow day. What do you say to the Brooklyn moms
With all
and
due
dads?
respect to them, we handle this, I think, and I give credit to everyone here, aggressively in a focused manner. And I'm a public school parent, as I think is well known. So I make these decisions with a parent's perspective. There was no question in my mind as we went over the facts last night with the National Weather Service and all the agencies that we could make sure that transportation was sufficient this morning and that people could get to work, people could get to school, and it was the right thing to do. There are a lot of factors that go into the decision. And first and foremost is safety. So I had to be convinced that the situation would be safe. But it's also really important to remember it's our obligation. If we can make the school day work, by law, that's our obligation. And I became convinced on the 10 o'clock call that we could, and from everything I'm seeing today, that's actually what's playing out. Yes. I'm pointing at you.
Great. So we were driving around actually last night from about 6 o'clock to about 8 o'clock, and maybe a lot of it was anecdotal, but I did not see a lot of equipment out on the Upper East Side. I personally did not see it. And so I'm just wondering, having heard from some of the people who live up there, would you have done anything different?
Look, and I will invite the Commissioner Doherty to come up in terms of talking about equipment levels, because when well, we all go out and we all see things and it's all imperfect. I told you about my anecdotal experiences. Everyone's is imperfect. The difference is I get to hear the reports from all over the city from the agencies, and I get to hear from the elected officials, and I'm telling you, based on everything I heard, there was a very strong and consistent effort. That being said, to Marcia's question, if there's any place that's not good enough, it's our job to go back and work harder. If right now there's some place on the Upper East Side that's not gotten the service it deserves, we're going to get on that right away. But I just want people to understand how intense and coordinated an effort was happening in each and every neighborhood of the city, and we don't stop until it's over. That's the bottom line. Commissioner, if you have any equipment numbers, that'd be great.
As of 2:30 yesterday in that area in Manhattan, we had 2¼ inches of snow on the ground. That continued to build up. We were about 4 inches at 4.5 inches at 4:30. I had 278 pieces of equipment working that area at that time. I stand and watch a lot of cameras monitoring roadways, many of them highways where I have a lot of equipment on, a lot during a snowstorm, and I quite often don't see my own equipment, and I know it's out there. So some people see a lot, and some people don't see a lot. I can't say why that happens, but I know what I have out there, and we monitor it, and it is what it is. But we were out there working hard, and we have to continue to do that.
Here in Brooklyn, you have Atlantic Avenue, which is completely clean. You can see the blacktop. And in the midtown of Manhattan, the snow is all over the streets.
Marcia, respectfully, it's a citywide effort, and a lot of equipment is being deployed. And if you go in any given situation, you're going to see in some places, because of accumulation, it's going to work better, it's going to work a little worse. The point is, it's an ongoing citywide effort. So with all due respect to anyone who wants to play out a theory here, it's just not accurate. We had a coordinated, intense citywide response. And if there's any areas that are not as good as they should be this moment, I assure you, I've been watching this man in action. He is very quick to make adjustments and get equipment out. But the sheer amount of manpower and equipment out there is extraordinary, and we'll keep applying it throughout the day wherever it's needed. Now, what's going on with the media today? I point at you and you turn around.
I wanted to ask about the traffic situation on the Upper East Side along 2nd Avenue. I know traffic agents were not deployed. Can you talk about the decision not to deploy those traffic agents?
I want to clarify. There is a difference between a situation where we have the real possibility of a traffic agent being in direct danger, for example, low visibility. And for a period of time as we were going into the rush hour, remember, the snow intensified very rapidly. We were in constant communication with the National Weather Service, and the report changed markedly in the later afternoon from what we thought was sort of going to be a slow and steady snowfall to a greatly intensifying snowfall for a period of time. On top of that, we had the winds. So visibility was really greatly reduced. And therefore, to take an individual traffic agent with no other protection but their own body out there on the line in the middle of low visibility, high icy conditions, that's just dangerous. And our job is to preserve and protect life, including the hardworking men and women who work for the city. There are other situations where we can put personnel on the ground, for example, vehicles with lights and things that can draw attention to make people safer and provide them some protection. But I think the point we were talking about yesterday is when you get to really low visibility conditions, you have to think about not putting these hardworking people in danger. The folks around us put themselves in harm's way every single day. So I want to be really clear about this. If there is a burning building in your neighborhood, one of these individuals will walk into it, run into it to save a life. So they know how to put themselves in harm's way. The EMTs put themselves in harm's way all the time. But what we don't want to do is something that truly endangers the lives of our own people needlessly, because if they can't be seen, they actually can't do the job we ideally would like them to do there. But that doesn't mean in those if there's a dangerous intersection, we're not going to reinforce with other methodologies such as putting a police car there. In the back? Yes, you.
The last time you closed schools, you said one of the biggest factors was the frigid temperatures. It was sub-zero.
Yep.
This morning, we're virtually at the same level of freezing cold. Do you feel it's safe for the kids to go to school? I know that transportation may not be the issue, but we're talking really cold temperatures, and that's what we're hearing from parents.
Of course, that's a real concern. And so, again, for 14 years, as a public school parent, I've thought about these exact issues for my own children. And we last time had a later breaking storm, and we were much less secure about what the transportation situation would be in the morning, MTA, school buses, etc. And I said then, and I felt it distinctly, if we didn't know if kids could get where they were needed to go, if they might be at a bus stop for a prolonged period of time and have that kind of exposure, that was a real concern. But when we heard at 10 p.m. last night from the National Weather Service that this snow was tapering off rapidly, we knew what Commissioner Doherty had that he could deploy overnight. We talked to the MTA, we talked to the Department of Education about the school bus capacity, etc. There's a real consensus on the call that we could get the system to work effectively, meaning kids would not be left in a situation of being outside for prolonged periods of time. And that's what was crucial in making the decision. You always start with the assumption that you'd rather have school. So long as it's safe, you would rather have kids in school. By the way, a lot of parents in this town will tell you that when kids aren't in school, it's incredibly disruptive for their lives, and they don't necessarily have a safe alternative place to send their child. So let's be clear. I respect that you talk to some parents. I am a parent. I talk to parents all the time. Closing school is a very big deal with a lot of ramifications. When we think the situation is not safe, when we think we won't have any attendance in school, that's when we should close it. But when we think we can actually get the school day off effectively and have transportation achieved in a way that will give us good attendance and that kids will be safe, it's our obligation to keep school open, and that's why we did it. Yep.
Sorry, do you know what the attendance rate is at school today?
Again, I just said we're waiting on that. We're waiting on that.
There was a rumor. Did Dante go to school today?
Dante went to school today. I personally escorted him to school, and he was grousing the whole way. But he had 3 exams today, so I just want to say for the record, Dante would have really liked to stay off with 3 exams, but he is doing his 3 exams as we speak. Thank you, everyone.
Mayor, will you take an off-topic question?
We just did everything.
You want to do pre-K? I just wondered if you would talk. I just wondered if, having seen the governor's whole plan for pre-K, if you think it's insufficient to deal with what you want to do, and you still think you need to do the PACs.
Again, I think I addressed this rather exhaustively yesterday, but I'll do it again. I put forward a vision to this city over the last year of full-day pre-K for every child in this city, after school for every middle school child. It's a 5-year plan that has to be funded consistently for it to work. And the people of this city very much agreed with that notion. They gave me a mandate, an overwhelming mandate, to pursue that notion, and you've seen that reiterated in public opinion poll after public opinion poll. So there's no question that this is an idea whose time has come. And again, I thought the New York Times editorial yesterday was a particularly powerful analysis of why this is necessary here and now. We can't achieve it if we don't have a reliable funding source. We can't achieve it if we have to wonder year to year how much money we will have. We can't achieve it if we have only a portion of the money as opposed to the total we need. So we are absolutely convinced that we can get a lot of this capacity up and running by the beginning of the next school year in September. We're going to have a very detailed analysis of that coming out shortly. But as I said yesterday, I really do appreciate the governor's focus on pre-K. I appreciate that he's putting forward important ideas and resources, but our plan requires a reliability and a consistency and a 5-year time frame. And the only way that can be achieved is with a tax on the wealthiest New Yorkers. And I have a mandate to pursue that from the people of the city, and I ultimately believe that Albany has to recognize in this and so many other matters that New York City should be given the right to make decisions for itself. This is a question of self-determination. This is a question of home rule. People in New York City have spoken. It's up to Albany to respect the rights of the people of this city and let us do what we need to do for our future. Thanks, everyone.